The changing of seasons can affect how you feel. 1 in 5 people experience some form of depression, no matter the time of year.
At the American Psychiatric Association Foundation, our vision is to build a mentally healthy nation for all. Visit mentallyhealthynation.org to learn more.
I think that at the orthodox heart of Christianity, even of the traditions where the exclusive truth claims are most important, there is this powerful, strong, constant teaching. We see through a glass darkly that there are things we will not understand in this lifetime, and that reverence for mystery is also a piece of orthodoxy.
Breathe on us now. Open your mouth and speak the word that heals this broken.
The Deconstructionist podcast is produced by Nicholas Rowe at the National Audio Preservation Society Recording Studio in Newark, Ohio.
Follow us on social media at www.thedeconstructionist.com, on Facebook at Deconstructionist Podcast, Twitter at DeconstructCast, and Instagram at Deconstructionist Podcast.
If listening to this podcast has benefited you in any way, or if you have connected with it, or it's resonated somewhere with you, please consider making a donation. Even the smallest donations go to help John and I maintain healthy relationships with our wives and keeps their blood pressure at a healthy level. The donate link is in the show notes, or you can visit our website and click the donate tab.
Breathe on us now. Open your mouth and speak the word that heals this broken ground. Say what you will. Show us your will as we breathe in.
Here we go.
All right.
Christmas in July.
Christmas in July.
This is a Christmas present.
You guys wanted strong, awesome female voices.
We have delivered.
I mean, besides Oprah, I don't think we can do much better.
No, we can't. In my opinion, this is better than Oprah. I love Oprah. Don't get me wrong.
I would still love to have Oprah.
I would, if you're listening,
Oprah,
Miss Winfrey.
Yeah,
we would love to have you on as a guest.
Anytime you want.
However, what we do have, in my opinion, better than Oprah, but we love you, Oprah. Krista freaking Tippett from On Being and from other various publications and shows. And oh my gosh, Krista freaking Tippett.
So before we get into that, because we do have a little bit of her bio for those of you who aren't familiar, we do reference some events, some things that have been going on in the world around us. We've been going through some pretty turbulent times that we reference. And for those who tune into this podcast later and don't exactly know what we're talking about, maybe you could go into a little bit about that first.
So this episode, we spoke with Krista Tippett July 8th, 2016. Mm-hmm. And during that week, there was just an almost unprecedented level, in recent memory at least, of just gut-wrenching, tragic, unexplainable acts of violence and hate across the country and across the world.
Yeah.
From Baton Rouge. This is all after, Orlando still seems to be ringing in all of our ears. And then we've got Baton Rouge and we've got Dallas and just...
Minnesota.
Minnesota. And then you've got right on the heels of that, you've got the terrorist attacks in Nice, France. And it's just like, when is this going to end? And so we reference the turbulence in this episode, but we don't really ever explain it. So at the point where we get to in the episode where we're talking around some really important themes of inclusiveness and unity and spirituality and humanity. And Krista talks about the events of this week, and we never say what week that is or what's going on. So just to give you guys some frame of reference, some context, that's kind of what we're talking about.
So, Krista Tippett.
Krista freaking Tippett.
Holy cow.
Ugh.
I mean, just reading her bio, I was like, man, what have I done with my life?
I let the fanboy out a little bit on this one.
Yeah, how can you not?
How could you not? And I don't care if we get 16 negative reviews on iTunes. I don't care.
At this point, I think people kind of know what to expect, you know?
It was,
Like, we hope that you guys at home are enjoying these conversations, are as excited by the things that we discuss as we are. And I mean, she's a Peabody award-winning broadcaster and New York Times best-selling author. She's received the National Humanities Medal at the White House in 2014.
Obama put that on her neck.
Yeah, there's a picture.
There's a picture. You can Google it.
But she's just a fascinating person. She studied history at Brown University. She studied politics at Fulbright on a Fulbright scholarship while in Cold War Europe in the 80s. She lived all over Europe and at one point even served as special assistant to the U.S. ambassador to West Germany. And then, just for fun, you know, she got her master's in divinity from Yale. That's who we're talking to.
She brings, so why would we have her on the Deconstructionist podcast? Not just because she is an absolutely sought after speaker, author, radio host, podcaster, figure in the world of faith, science, politics, spirituality, all the humanities, essentially, all the human disciplines. Krista Tippett's show, her work, her research speaks around these things and pulls them together into this continuity that I've never seen anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm completely in love with her in her work. I mean, she's a wonderful person, kind, warm, bubbly. She is as human as she alludes to in all of her works about humans. She talks a lot about humanities, and she is a fully alive, fun person to be with. And I just still can't believe that we got to talk to her.
I mean, can you imagine putting her and Sarah Bessie in the same room?
Good
I'd evaporate
Lord.
As a human being.
I would too. Or melt into a puddle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just absolutely wonderful stuff. So why have her on the podcast, though? You know, this is a show that John and I want to do with all of you listeners about being on a journey and being awake and aware and not believing by proxy, but asking questions and inquiring, following your curiosity. And nobody does that better, in my opinion, than Krista Tippett. So it was like a no-brainer for me. But some people are probably wondering, like, how does this fit in?
And to them, I would say, listen to the episode, and then that will become abundantly clear. And then go to our show notes.
Yes.
There we will have links. I highly recommend. She has an amazing website where not only she writes, but a host of other people write. But she still does a blog for free.
Unbelievable.
And then check out her books and definitely her podcast. She has a couple, and they're absolutely brilliant. She's known as being one of the best interviewers, unlike us.
Oh, when John and I first started
We're
doing
learning.
this, it was like, so I'm listening to a lot of Krista Tippett right now
Yeah.
to try to get better at this game. Unbelievable. What a blessing. Thanks to her and her crew, specifically Bethany Clocker, who hopefully that's how you pronounce it, that set us up with her. And man, this was just so much fun.
Oh, man, what a blast.
You guys are going to really enjoy all the themes we touch on, and the book that she just came out with again, which is already a New York Times bestseller, that's called On Becoming Wise, an inquiry into the mystery and art of living. It's just absolutely phenomenal stuff. So
Yeah.
without further ado,
Krista
freaking Tippett. Well, Krista freaking Tippett, I cannot tell you how excited I am to welcome you with a big hug to the Deconstructionist podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm giving you a big virtual hug back.
I can feel it.
You have no idea how much that made Adam say just now.
I'm a pure extrovert, 7 on the Enneagram, and I'm loving this already. This is fantastic. So if a lot of people listening to the show, we've got this vast spectrum of spiritually curious people sort of outside the faith. We've got people inside the faith that are just learning to kind of wake up, take the journey seriously for themselves, and ask questions that they may have thought were scary before. But if anybody's listening to this show and they haven't been acquainted with your work, if they were born, under a rock or in a barn, and they haven't been privileged enough to listen to On Being or get some of your books or or anything, would you just, by way of introduction, just tell us a little bit about Krista Tippett and how Krista Tippett started to do the work that you are now known to be doing? Could you just give us the mini bio?
The mini bio. Well, I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma, in an immersive kind of Southern Baptist world, and that was very formative for me. But the life of the mind was not part of the religious world of my childhood, and I went far away to college and kind of left the entire culture behind because it didn't make sense in the way I had learned it. It didn't, and I wasn't sure how relevant it was to the complexity of that world out there. And I ended up in divided Germany. I got I really believe that politics was where all the interesting questions were being asked and all the interesting answers formulated. But I kind of, by a combination of effort and luck, I landed in divided Berlin at this real, at a fault line of the Cold War world, a place where geopolitics was at its most intense in that time. And I learned definitively that I was really left wanting by what, in fact, politics had a capacity to address. And I started to become aware of that human beings are strange and wonderful, and that they are not utterly defined by the circumstances in which they live, even the political circumstances, and even in extreme circumstances. And so I started to feel like that's where I wanted to be, putting my energy in the world. And at that point, I eventually started asking, but almost kind of reluctantly calling them spiritual questions again, and ended up going to study theology because I needed to know that if I was coming back to this, I had, that I had to be able to apply my mind, and it had to be relevant to the world and to all its complexity and multiplicity as I'd experienced it. And so I studied theology, and then I came out of that with a Master's of Divinity, still with the perspective of a journalist, and realized that this whole part of life we don't. This was the mid-'90s, and I think we're a little bit better now, but that basically we had no robust vocabulary for talking about this part of life in its fullness in public. And so that became my, this calling this passion that just kind of consumed me, and I ended up creating this radio show to have to be able to say, we have to find a way to speak of these things in a way that retains their integrity, their spiritual integrity, and also their intellectual integrity. And so that became this adventure of a public radio show, which originally was called Speaking of Faith, and now is called On Being, and now is as much a podcast as it is a radio show.
And
how's that?
That was so concise and wonderful.
Perfect.
And I could ask you 15 questions just based on that little bit of your language is so good. But wow, man.
So one of the things that I think is really interesting, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit in your bio there, if I remember correctly, your grandfather was a Southern Baptist minister, correct?
Yes, that's right.
So you've mentioned this before in previous interviews and some of your writing. That seems to be something that you've thought about a great deal, just in regards to the fact that you've mentioned that he was a very intelligent man, but seemed to stay within kind of this circle of certainty, if you want to call it that. How has that influenced the work that you do today?
My grandfather stayed in the circle of certainty because I think he was afraid of what would happen if he didn't. He had a second grade education. He had grown up in a more, he grew up his family came to Oklahoma in a covered wagon. They were literally dirt poor. The world was a harsher place, and I found him to be fearful, not just of anything that might not be explained in Scripture, but also of the body, of the fact is, he was a very passionate person, and I think that was an uncomfortable thing for him, and he had not been given any ways to integrate that with the pretty strict rules and the he was a hellfire and brimstone preacher, right? It was about, there was a lot of punishment looming at all times. And I also felt when I went away, I realized, heaven was a very small place and God was kind of mean.
Yeah.
Even Methodists weren't making it into heaven.
Oh no.
But what I have reflected on it a great deal, and it's very much formed me. But what I've realized over the years, as I have kind of combed through that memory, is that I was formed both by what my grandfather said and also who he was, and those two things were at best in a creative interplay, at worst in contradiction. But it's okay, because reality is contradictory,
Absolutely.
and we are contradictory creatures. So even though my grandfather could be so harsh and frightening, his theology could be frightening, he was also, I think, he talked about a God of love. And in some ways his theology, the God of his theology, you could question whether that was all about love. But my grandfather himself was loving, and he was funny, he was playful, he was passionate. And so I think that all of that, including those contradictions in him, informed my sense of who God might be.
One of the things that I just love about your work, and I've been a fan for a long time, is that there's not even a whiff of bitterness or cynicism or anything to anything that you've come from or anything that you've maybe disagreed with along the way. You just have this way of being so gracious. And one of our favorite authors or speakers is Richard Rohr, and he has a phrase that he likes to say, transcend and include. And it's the only way to prevent bitterness. But I just want to just give you high marks for that. It's just, we need more of that. We really do. We need more of those loving, open spaces where, I'm not seeing it the same way that these people, that raised me, or these people that my tradition is. I'm not seeing it just like that anymore, but it's that, and it's not just.
Well, and there's what people believe, and then there's how they came to see the world that way. And I think in almost every case, no matter how ugly or hateful the beliefs might seem to us, the story, especially when something is ugly and hateful, there's pain behind that.
Yeah.
There's woundedness. Anger is what fear and pain look like when they show themselves in public, and that's the only way we have taught pain to show itself in public. I think that this moment we are in right now, this week, is a demonstration of that. Our presidential election is a demonstration of that. And we have got to learn to reckon with that. But anyway.
So good. I am not about saying every belief is fine. It's not about relativism. But we have to make room for the humanity behind positions and beliefs. In order for if what we're really invested in is the fact that we share life with these other people, and we want to create more space for that humanity to show itself in its fullness. But we don't make that move culturally. We don't have those conversations. We don't create situations where people feel trustworthy for people to become just that much more vulnerable, to admit their questions as well as their answers. We don't reward that. And so there's work to do, not just in having new conversations, but in creating a cultural container in which a new kind of encounter is possible. Man, so good, Krista.
To go back a little bit to the kind of timeline that you laid out of how you got to where you are now, one of the things I thought was really interesting that was right in your bio off your website was a kind of a quote that you had there in discussing your experiences that you had while in Europe and your experiences while attaining your Master's of Divinity from Yale. You came to the conclusion, you said, that there was a black hole where intelligent coverage of a religion should be.
Yeah.
Can you
Mm.
unpack that? What did you
love
mean by that?
I mean, there are a few things. I think that there was and still is a bit of a tendency to cover religion and interview religious people like you cover politics and interview politicians.
Huh.
And it's not actually the right format to get at the heart of the matter or to draw out the best of what people are representing. By the same token, I think something that, kind of started going wrong in American culture in the end of the 20th century was, high-profile religious people who actually squeezed themselves into political boxes and into political modes of discourse in order to be heard. But in the process, really betraying the spirit of what they were about.
Yeah.
So, a thought experiment for me is, what if when there had been, for most of the 20th century, actually, devout Christian voices, conservative Christian voices had willfully taken themselves out of the public sphere because they didn't experience it to be compatible with their presence in the world or what they were about. When they did, when a few, really pretty strident voices reinserted themselves, it was all about positions on moral values. It was about rights and wrongs and good and evil.
Absolutely.
And but what if, this is my question, but the integrity of the tradition and of Scripture always insists on holding together. Yes, it does. It does call people to discern truth and to stand for truth and articulate truth. But at the very same time, there's an equally strong calling for the care with which we use our words, love of enemies, welcoming the stranger. And so the calling is very complex. It is to hold those things in some kind of tension. It's not just in the positions you take, it is in the way you live. And that was completely lost. That nuance was completely lost. So, but I like to think, what if the effect of Christian voices re-entering political life had been that they demonstrated and we all learned what love of enemies would look like embodied in political life. That would have been a whole other way to reassert the validity of this tradition in public life. And nobody would be wringing their hands about religion and politics.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of one way I come at that.
So I guess one of my follow-up questions is that one of the things that we find really interesting on our show that we talk about pretty frequently is, and mostly because the people listening, a lot of the people anyway, listening to our show are either on a journey where they're dealing with struggles and doubts within faith of any kind, or have gone through that period, that period of doubt. So obviously you've talked a little bit about, kind of pushing back against the things that you were raised in, the beliefs that you were handed as a child, and going off to university and starting to ask questions and kind of broaden your spirituality. What was it? Was there a specific moment, or was there some catalyst that kind of brought you back into a life of faith or a life of spirituality?
I happened to live in my 20s in divided Berlin and to be doing journalism and being with political people there. And it was probably one of the most secular contexts that I could have existed in. So I really did not talk about religion at all or know anybody who talked about it or was involved in it for about 6 years.
Wow.
Except that at the very end, before the Berlin Wall came down, churches on the eastern side of the wall started to be places where people could speak truth, and there started to be illegal copy machines in the basements of churches and things like that. So at that point, there I started paying attention to church, but it was as a political force. And I honestly think, though, I was working at this. I was working with it at the end. I was working with an ambassador. I was working with people who were truly powerful, who were moving those nuclear weapons around on the map. But I found myself really unsettled by the gap between their public lives and their powerful public lives and their often really immature and I don't know, just not interesting or respectable private lives, and just their kind of shrunken intimate lives.
Oh wow.
And then at the same time, I was very taken by, being in East Berlin, where you had a lot of people who materially had nothing, who also didn't have choices. They didn't. It's not just that they didn't have freedom; they didn't have a lot of possibilities, but who managed to create lives of dignity and beauty. And so, I think as I was pondering those kinds of things, those were spiritual wanderings, right?
Absolutely.
That was about morality and spirituality, and it was getting on the kinds of things that theology arose to address. But I didn't call it that. I suppose the turning point was just when I left Berlin and I went to a beautiful place, and I just got quiet for the first time in about 6 years, and it was actually getting quiet and actually because what I'd been doing, these kinds of things I'm talking about, these questions were unnerving, but at the same time I was doing something that was very exciting and prestigious and, exhilarating in its way. So I hadn't actually let myself attend to those confusions. And then I started doing something that I only eventually called praying, but it kind of grew out of the silence and the searching.
Just like it did in the early stages of the church, and even the Jewish mystics and Islamic mystics, and there's something that everyone kind of gets with that, with prayer coming out of silence, that modernity kind of neutralized it or sterilized it. Actually, you know what? I just love talking to you so much, but I really did want to. There's a part of your book, your new book, Becoming Wise, which, by the way, is gripping. I was reading it the other night to my wife, getting her a little bit more acquainted with your work. She's always busy raising our kids, and she doesn't have the luxury to listen to scores of podcasts that I do when I'm on the road in my profession. And and I started reading, and she just said, "Oh, will you just please keep reading that?"
I love that. Tell her I said hello.
Oh, I will. And she just, your words are just so, I can tell you spent such a great deal of time crafting the sentences, and I just want you to know how appreciative I am. But I want to read you, in your chapter, Flesh, it's called The Body's Grace. You say this, medicine became an art of treating our parts, not our whole. Religion divided us inside with high mystical notions that we are souls trapped in bodies, and theologies that made flesh and sin indistinguishable. One of the things that I've learned from you and your work, and then Karen Armstrong and many, many others, is that I'm trying to kind of cleanse my palate from modernity and how categorical everything has always been. And there's this integration of all of life that you just, I think you're the best at it. How did that become when did that become such a big part of your work? Just integrating all of it and breaking down these categories.
Well, I've never quite been posed that question exactly in that way. But what comes to mind is that I think, my grandfather was a perfect exemplar of the, earlier on you talked about how I retain compassion even for what I distanced myself from. And I did eventually understand that in the world in which my grandfather grew up, everything was about making sure sex didn't happen, which of course, like the more you
Right.
more you focus on that and get obsessive about it, the more likely it is that you will be self-defeating. But so much was, or also he was so worried about sex and drinking, and he was worried about card playing, which I never understood. And then later I realized that in the world in which my grandfather grew up, pregnancy out of wedlock, pregnancy on its own. I mean, 30% of women died in childbirth 100 years ago, right? So I realized that there was danger to these things that I needed, that was real in his generation. These rules made sense in terms of keeping people safe and whole. And that it, I did a project when I was creating the radio show, but not yet able to make a living off it, for Hazelden, the treatment center, which is in Minnesota. And I ended up talking to people in countries where AA had come in living memory, and realizing that, before there were 12 steps, before there was AA, addiction was a fatal illness. Like there was absolutely nothing to send people to or to give people, and people died, and they wrecked the lives of everybody around them. So I started to understand that it wasn't just him being stubborn or stupid, right? That there was actually an intelligence about the body, but it was a sad thing that the body had to be seen as just this entry point of danger, because it did leave him less whole, and it left everybody less whole, and so I think so I had that of that experience of now realizing. I think as I studied theology, I'm almost on behalf of him,
wow.
I kind of, and then the other thing that happened is also integrating the mind with the body.
Yes.
Because I went away then to a world that in fact was in many ways way overly cerebral and over intellectualized. So it wasn't actually an antidote to that. It was kind of a different form of division. So I think some way in the ways that I saw that my weird upbringing gave me these experiences of kind of worlds of extreme difference, there was something in me that longed to help recover the wholeness between those worlds and within them. That's I guess the answer that I come to.
Yeah, I just thank you for the backstory. That is what I love most about your work.
So one of the interesting things that I think you touched on, and it kind of leads to my next question, is you got this rich experience of being able to go over to spend some time in Europe and experience these different cultures, and I would imagine even come into contact with other religions and other faiths. Do you think that with the advent of technology, before, back in the 20 years ago or so, the only way to get that experience was to literally travel, whereas now, due to the internet, post-internet, we are quickly becoming this very pluralized society, and obviously this isn't exclusive to Christianity, but Western Christianity, speaking from my own experience, seems to have this kind of exclusive claim to certainty and to truth, and that sort of thing. What do you see as in terms of the effect of kind of this changing world that we live in, and the fact that we're suddenly confronted with not only different religions but different races, and how do you see this changing our society?
I still remember after 9/11 there was a column by Tom Friedman in the New York Times, and he's a brilliant columnist, but he said that one of the implications of 9/11 was that the monotheistic traditions would have to relinquish their exclusive truth claims. And I remember reading that and thinking, that's not going to happen, and it would be it can't happen. Right? I mean, those exclusive truth claims are part of the integrity of those traditions.
Right.
And so, yeah, something has to change, but it's not that. And that's actually a ridiculous, and I mean, he's a brilliant person, but it was a ridiculous, and earlier on we were talking about how, journalism doesn't see or understand religion in its integrity, and it was actually a very uninformed and unintelligent analysis of something. I hope he doesn't listen to your podcast.
I'm sure he doesn't. We might as well be talking.
I mean, I'm not. He's part of the world that he's part of, and it makes sense in that world, but it doesn't, in fact, make sense.
Don't worry, Krista. There's probably nobody's listening. This is like in a closet. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, very underground.
I'm not too worried about Tom Friedman listening. But that says more about him than about you.
Right.
There's nothing in me, actually, even given all the diversity that I experience and that I am enriched by, there's nothing in me that thinks that Christians can or should get rid of exclusive truth claims. I just think that actually, if you look at the Bible and the tradition in its wholeness, we're talking about putting things back together, putting all the pieces back together in all that we do. One place that I really focus is here's what I think. I think for Christians, and this is really more a Christian thing than other traditions, and it's not all Christians, but for Christians for whom this exclusivity is really central, the existence of living in a world of religious others and religious others of integrity, right? Religious others who you come to love and who marry your children and live next door, and
absolutely
it's a mystery, right? It's the mystery of the religious other, and so I think it then becomes work of theology to investigate, what is the faithful way to stand before that mystery, and I actually think that reverencing mystery, which honestly, for my grandfather and for that church I grew up in, mystery was not really something you wanted to get. I think that part of the tradition got shortchanged in a way that, in fact, was not faithful.
Yes.
Because it was this realm of where your certainties might not be certain, and everything dictated against that. But I think that at the orthodox heart of Christianity, even of the traditions where the exclusive truth claims are most important, there is this powerful, strong, constant teaching. We see through a glass darkly that there are things we will not understand in this lifetime, and that reverence for mystery is also a piece of orthodoxy. And I actually think it actually allows us to have it all, right? I mean, it's a great thing. It's great news because it means you can say, I am called, I had discerned this truth, I have learned this truth, I believe it, I'm called to live it and practice it and pursue it. And that is faithful. But at the very same time, you have to hold that together with this calling to say, and there are things I will not understand in this lifetime. And I think the reality, the mystery of religious others is one of those things now and forever, probably from now on in humanity's history.
Beautiful.
I love it. In fact, I just looked over at John, big excited look on my face, and I pointed to the next question that I was going to ask you because one of the things I recently heard you say is what you just said. It's this we can have these robust beliefs, we can have certainty, we can have truth, but we can have it all. Could you just spend maybe just a little more time? What do you mean by that for people that are listening that feel torn between either just sheer openness, they're loving exploring, they feel like they are Lewis and Clark on a new expedition and they're out in the open again, but they feel like they've left behind all these robust beliefs and the vocabulary and the certainty and the truth. You think we can have it all. I do too.
What do you mean by that?
I do too. I think searching is a part of orthodoxy. I also think that if God is God, we cannot be frightened of what our search will reveal, right? We cannot be frightened of what we can discover. If God made our brains, which are so miraculous in ways that we're understanding more and more, that we're only now grasping in whole new ways, then we cannot be frightened of what they yield. We absolutely can be frightened of what we can do with that knowledge, but not of the knowledge itself.
I love it so much. You
guys you're great for my ego.
No, I'm
gonna go be with my teenage children after this, and they will not be nearly as appreciative of what comes out of my mouth.
Listen, I'm gonna put this out there. If you ever need a pep talk, Krista, I would be happy.
We'll have designated pep talk time.
Not a problem at all. What you're doing is so important, and I could listen to you all day. So let's get a little bit more practical for these people that we're starting to give them this, beacon of hope. That's like, oh my gosh, really? That's possible? I didn't know that. That's amazing. I feel so stuck. I feel like it's one way or the other. I don't know how to transcend and include. And you talk a lot about fear. As being, so why should we be afraid? So some people are afraid to ask questions. They are afraid of what the result is going to be. What would you say to people like that?
Yeah, right. And even to make the kinds of statements that I make about the beauty of mystery, I can make from a position of being somebody who has a pretty secure place in the world, right? I have some advantages of education and experience that make me more comfortable with complexity and uncertainty. That's really important for me to know. And to be fearful of uncertainty is something that, in fact, is something planted in our bodies. And some of us are fortunate because of the degree of security and safety and education we have to be able to transcend that a bit, to be able to work with that. And I think we're all just, we're different. So in fact, there are different personality types, and some people are just more animated and energized by uncertainty and a search, and some people aren't. And so that's okay. The fear and the anxiety are not a problem. And we absolutely can't judge them in other people.
Yes.
I don't know what else to say about that. This just has to be part of the strangeness of us that's out there in our midst. But I do think that, I know you're talking about people grappling with themselves, but even as they're defining themselves over against that group they came from, I think it can soften your own search to understand that it's a kind of a privilege to be able to be animated by the searching. And to understand that, but you don't help other people out of their fearfulness by telling them how stupid they are, or finding it ridiculous and communicating that it's ridiculous. So I think there's the work we have to do with ourselves, and then there's the work we have to do eventually to create a softer space between what we are and what we're asking and where other people are, where it might just be, we actually have to make people feel safe for them to be able to share their questions. And I think we neglect that work, and then there's just this chasm between us and where we came from. And that's painful and disorienting in its own ways.
Absolutely.
So good.
So one of the things I thought was interesting as I was kind of diving into kind of your background is you start out in history, And so you had me there because I also studied history in college. And then you move on to, obviously, theology, which clearly Adam and I are both, have a great fascination with. And then anybody who follows your work notices that you have this fascination with the relationship between science and faith. And so that's when Adam and I think realized that you might be our spirit animal. So,
absolutely.
Having said that, it comes up. You've written a book, Einstein's God: Conversations about Science and the Human Spirit. You've interviewed a lot of interesting scientists on your program. Blog articles and that sort of thing. Where did this? What sparked this curiosity and kind of the relationship and how they inform one another?
That curiosity is not something that was with me at all when I started the show. When I was, creating this in the early 2000s, it's something that grew out of. And I'm one of these people who would say I was never good at science. I never understood science, and I finally I've really internalized what my conversations with scientists have taught me, which is that, we don't say I can't listen to music because I couldn't write music, right?
Right.
I can't listen to music, right? I can't listen to music because I don't understand what's happening with the chords, right? That science is this discipline, and in fact, it has a lot of kinship with the arts. It's this great treasure trove in our midst, and it belongs to all of us, even if we can't all do it. And I think things like the Hubble telescope and the Human Genome Project and, the neuroscience that's happening now, I think it's like someone helping us claim this as a human discipline amidst our other disciplines. And I think that, but early on, I started talking to people like John Polkinghorne, who I'd never heard of people like this, right? Who's a physicist, and he's a quantum physicist. He's a member of the Royal Society.
Yeah.
And he finds ways he has this congenial vocabulary as a theologian, as a physicist, and he doesn't try to tie it all up into a neat bow, but he doesn't find it inherently at odds. And so that was this revelation to me. And I mean, then it just, at some point, I just concluded, and I really believe this, that the entire science religion standoff is just, it's made up. It's unnecessary. It's not true to the history of science, nor is it true to the history of Christianity. And it mostly is a Christian thing. And I don't know. I just got more and more fascinated. And originally I was very taken by just learning that there were people like John Polkinghorne, and there are many people like him who hold these disciplines in some kind of relationship, in some kind of conversation. And then I started to discover people who are not at all religious, but the things they are asking and exploring and learning have theological and spiritual implications.
Absolutely.
And so I think for us in the 21st century, being enriched and informed by that sphere, those are raw materials of theology as much as, they're working on the problem of free will and what makes compassion more likely than violence, and all these things that religion has been, that are at this inquiry that's been at the heart of religion forever. And so I just very gradually, step by step, conversation by conversation, this has just become one of the most interesting things I do. And it's interesting to everybody, right? I mean, not everybody, but to many, many people.
See, Krista, there you go again, just integrating all of life like a pro.
Oh, man. Your kids just don't appreciate you.
I love it so much. What I really want more than anything for the people listening to this podcast is to subscribe to your podcasts. I listen to both of them. I love them. They're a big part of my week. I love them so much. And I just love your book so much. So I want to end with reading you another part of your book and asking you to talk a little bit about the book. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I love this. Okay, so you say in the intro, because I really just want to give people a taste so they go buy this book. They really need to. It's on becoming wise. You say we have riches of knowledge and insight, of tools both tangible and spiritual, to rise to this calling. We watch our technologies become more intelligent and speculate imaginatively about their potential to become conscious. All the while, we have it in us to become wise. Wisdom leavens intelligence, emboldens consciousness, and advances evolution itself.
I checked that last statement out with an evolutionary biologist, by the way. I said, "Is this true? Can I really say this?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "It's absolutely true."
If he would have said no, I would have implored you to leave it in there anyway.
Right.
So my question after reading this little section is, tell the listener, what do you mean by wisdom? What does it mean to become wise?
So I'm drawing the contrast there between knowledge and wisdom, intelligence and wisdom, consciousness and wisdom. I think it's hard. There's no pat definition, but I think the best way I have to start talking about that is I think that intelligence and knowledge can be things we possess, right? You can point at someone and you can say that's an intelligent person, that they have knowledge. I think that the measure and the perception of wisdom, it's often, has very much to do with intelligence and knowledge, but the measure and perception of it has to do with the imprint that person makes on the world, right? It's the effect they have on other people around them, as much as it is, who they are and what they know. It's another step, it's the difference between information and discernment. And it's integrated. It's, we've been talking about this the whole time. These are people where there's an integration that is not just maybe visible, but that is palpable between their inner life and their outer presence in the world. It's embodied, right? It's embodied. It's not just a thought or a spirit. It's all of it.
Everybody needs to buy this book. Well, we want to be respectful of your time. So how about Krista Tippett? You want to do should we do a little lightning round?
All right, we'll see if I can do this.
Lightning round. Have you ever done a lightning round before?
I don't think so.
We haven't either.
We've threatened it, but never actually gone through with it. So,
but if there's anybody I want to do,
great. I'm a guinea
pig. You totally are. So we'll give you one word. This is like my dream. I dreamed about this moment. Okay. We'll give you one word, and then you just say whatever you want.
Okay.
Whatever comes to mind.
All right.
All right. Lightning round. Mystery.
Welcoming, expansive. I love this line of Robert Coles, who wrote The Spiritual Life of Children, that mystery is a great companion. And mystery is something that I have come. I would say if there's one effect of all of this work I've done across the years on me, it is that I have my sense of mystery is much greater. It's something that I feel is rich and spacious, and I trust it. And I can take delight in it. But it's you have to. That's not. I don't think that's automatic or necessarily that natural. I think it's something. It's like anything else. You have to practice this, but it's a great gift. It's a great gift that's come to me from this practice I've had of inviting other people to give voice to mystery.
Oh,
so good.
Perfect. Okay, you're doing really well, by the way.
Yeah, that was excellent.
Yes, you were worried. I know. You're fine. Okay, next random lightning round word. God.
Too small a word.
Wow.
Okay. So good.
I don't. It's just impossible to. I believe in God, but I don't. But what that word contains is so much bigger and so much wilder than it used to be. And so the longer I live, the more confining that word itself becomes. Like I still use it, and we can't get rid of it. And it's like the word love, right? It gets really ruined and watered down, and yet there's nothing like saying I love you, and there's nothing like invoking God, but it's always inadequate.
Well, one of our words on here was love, so you just nailed that one. You just got a twofer. So
that's exciting.
All right, a couple more. Being.
Boy, that's a hard one. It's a word with a great theological and philosophical lineage. But it also doesn't say much, and I think that makes it. It's not a word. Of course, we use the word being all the time, but to speak about being as the way what it means in the title of a show called On Being.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily carry a lot of concrete meaning for people if you just throw it out there. But on the other hand, that's also what makes it a wonderful word, because it's very spacious. It's not controversial. It's not freighted like the word faith, which is very meaningful for some people and very fraught for others. And it's just carries all the connotations of all the ways the word itself has been abused. I don't think the word being it's more kind of pristine, and it's a little bit transcendent, but even though it's talking about the most elemental reality there is.
Okay, last word. Beauty.
Oh, that's one of my. I would say I talked about mystery and how my sense of mystery is one of the biggest, one of the things that's changed in me the most and changed me the most. And I think the other, if I had to name one other thing, it would be understanding beauty as a core moral value, as a litmus test.
Wow.
And as one of these qualities, or I don't know, is it a quality? One of these experiences, one of these values, virtues, which does create wholeness. I like the John O'Donohue, the late poet and philosopher, said that his definition of beauty was, beauty is that in the presence of which we feel more alive. So, and you do have to define it, because it's another word that gets misused and overused. But if you think of beauty that way, it's not just a beautiful face or a beautiful visual. It's a beautiful life. And it's not about perfection. It's about, what is life-giving. And I do experience wise people, all kinds of wise people, whether they're scientists or philosophers or teachers or poets or, whatever they do, or business people, to have a robust sense of beauty. And it does connect the physical, the bodily, and the beautiful, the wonderful perceptive powers of our minds, and also just this thing, whatever spirit is, which feels drawn to certain experiences and changed by them. And so I think that I grew up in a place where the natural world was not very hospitable or taken very important. where the body was an entry point of danger.
Yeah.
Where there just wasn't much of an aesthetic sensibility where it was kind of like the practical American frontier. And I think I would have said then, and well into my young adulthood, if you'd done this lightning test with me, I might have said beauty was, an optional thing, right? I mean, a wonderful thing, of course, but not necessary to life. And now
Like a
I think
luxury.
beauty is absolutely necessary to life. I think it's necessary to faith, and I think it's necessary to truth.
So good.
I don't think there's any better way to wrap this time up. I mean, you passed the lightning round with flying colors. I think you should know that.
I want you to send me a certificate.
Absolutely. You got it.
John will make you a certificate.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we want to be respectful of your time, and we just want to say
Thank
we
you.
want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was such an honor for us to have you on our show. It really just I think it made Adam's year, actually.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a lot of fun, and that's a litmus test for me too. And really very, you really got me thinking. So that means that your questions are good. So thank you.
That might be the biggest honor.
Now
that
you
we-
made my
yes.
year.
So
will you let me know when you're posting this or whatever you're
Absolutely.
doing with it?
Oh,
Okay.
Absolutely. And before we let you go, real quick, what is the best place for people listening to keep up on what you're up to and find your books, your podcasts, and all that good stuff?
Well, you can get the book wherever books are found.
Yes.
Becoming Wise, and the show is at onbeing.org. But however you get podcasts, if it's on iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud, the podcast is out there. We do have apps which are free, the On Being app. And we have this little Becoming Wise podcast, which is new, which is also in all those places.
So good.
So it's pretty easy to find.
Outstanding.
the Elie Wiesel one today. Oh my gosh.
Oh, did you listen to that?
Oh.
Yeah, that means so much to me. I had forgotten about the first time I met him. I don't know why. I mean, I remembered that interview so clearly, but I'd forgotten about that first meeting in Germany. And how much that meant to me. I love listening to him today.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I was totally crying. I was mowing the lawn, listening to it, and crying.
Yeah. No, I mean, Elie Wiesel talking about prayer. It was just incredible.
It was incredible.
Yeah,
so everybody should get that podcast as well.
Yeah, good. Good. That makes me happy too. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to know about what you're all doing and who you are.
Yes,
thank you.
absolutely. Hopefully we can do this again sometime down the road.
Okay.
Thank
You
you
got my
so
numbers,
much.
all my numbers. You have
I
them.
do.
Yes,
I
we
do.
do.
It's going to be a
My
time.
landline and my cell.
I'm going on vacation like tomorrow morning for the first time in like 5 years. And I'm just going to be
good.
thinking about the fact that I just interviewed Krista Tippett and I have her phone number.
Yeah. That's true.
Well, I wish you a wonderful vacation. I'm going on vacation at the end of next week, and I need it badly.
Yes,
Oh.
ditto.
I got to wait till September. This is not fair.
Oh.
Much love to you, Krista Tippett.
Thank
Thank
you
you for
so
the work
much.
you do. Thank you for
Thank
your grace.
you. Thank
And
you.
We can't wait till next time.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Every day we go to war again. We assume we know so much more than them before we hear what they have to say. Headline breaks and we start to hate again, calling them names again. We give our peace.
Man, I'm worried about our listeners that are driving in their cars right now.
I know. I don't want to be the cause of any accidents.
Or they're like at the gym working out
And fell off the treadmill.
and just listen to that lightning round.
Dude, coming from a man who has fallen off a treadmill before.
I have too.
As a single man in front of two
Did
cute
you do
girls.
that at the gym?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, me too, man. I totally bit it hard.
The worst part was it happened in slow motion. My shoe came untied, and I tried to like get to it without stopping, and I ended up turning around backwards, and it landed on my butt, and it shot me off the end of the treadmill. So, and the two girls are standing there trying not to like, hyperventilate and I was like, I can't come back here anymore. I just can't come back here anymore.
Do you know how I fell off? This is so me.
Yeah.
I was listening to I can't even remember what it was now, but I was listening to some talk or lecture or sermon or something like that. And a lot of times, because I get so distracted because of my ADD, I'll try to close my eyes on the treadmill. And so I was closing my eyes to try to focus, and I kind of half stepped off.
Oh, yeah.
And just ate it, man. Just ate it hard. Like, I don't even remember what happened. All I remember is falling, and I kind of turned around, so I fell mostly on my butt. But then my head kind of hit, and then I was like, before I knew it, I was just like on the ground, like sitting there.
Was anybody looking?
Everybody was looking.
Like,
because my phone was in like the cup holder.
Yeah.
And I had the headphones in, so my phone got pulled out of the cup holder and like flew like 10 feet.
Oh,
like,
no.
And so I had to like pick up all my crap and anyway.
There you go.
So the lightning round, though, hopefully we didn't injure anybody with that.
She handled it like a professional. I mean, as soon as we laid out the word God and her answer to that, I wasn't expecting it. I mean, you know, when we did that, it was kind of fun, and she was laughing about it when we were prepping for the interview.
Right.
We had no idea where she was going to go with it, and she didn't either. And
she's a treasure.
Mic drop. I mean, she could have walked off stage, and we could have ended in complete silence.
I mean, honestly, if I have one self-sacrificial hope at the end of this episode, when people are listening to it, is that honestly, we get bumped down their list of podcasts to listen to, and people just listen to, if they've never listened to On Being, like if I can give one gift to the world, it's listen to Krista freaking Tippett.
Yeah.
Like,
her interview skills.
And then listen to us, of course.
Yeah,
and that'd be great.
And then you can compare and contrast and realize what rookies we really are.
How we're coming along.
We're coming along.
With promise,
yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But man, what a fun. I think what I love most about Krista's work, and if people are really interested in somebody that took great pains to write with beautiful prose, almost poetic, her new book is just so good. I can't even describe how good it is. And what she does better than anyone, in my opinion, is integrates all of life and shows us how this Enlightenment, modern compartmentalization of this is mind, and this is spirit, and this is a body, and this is politics, and this is work, and this is... No, those barriers don't exist. We are integrated beings living in an integrated world, and we need to learn better how to talk about the fact that reality is holistic, and that life is holistic, and that you, the listener, us, we are whole beings. We are physical and spiritual, and there is a mystery to all of this. And she's amazing, man.
Yeah.
She's absolutely amazing.
If nothing else, I hope that the people out there listening feel more hopeful.
Yes.
After that, absolutely, considering the circumstances that we find ourselves in now. I mean, it's very easy. I know you and I both, you know, we talk every day, and I know based on the things that were occurring in the news, you know, all the shootings, the violence, it's very easy to lose sight of hope and say, what is going on?
Yeah.
And is it ever going to get better?
Yeah.
And I think she gives me a little hope, you know, that things can get better, that they will get better if there are people out there who care enough,
right,
and continue to connect and to love one another. And one of the songs I think that was just perfect, and this just kind of fell together. I hope people have noticed that we've tried to start weaving in music, throughout our episodes, and that's just been kind of one of the fun byproducts of what we do. But the artist this week, we'd like to thank the Brilliance, the name of this band, for giving us permission. And there's a song that they write that Adam and I both just are floored by every time we listen to it, and it's called Brother.
Oh man.
And I just hope you guys listen to the words, and I think we felt like it was the perfect song to end this episode on.
Yeah. When the events of that week were unfolding, and I just felt so paralyzed with just grief and anger and confusion and sadness, and I put that album on, and I was listening to the song Brother, and I was just having a drink, and I was like, there's nothing I can do right now but just sit here, listen to this song, take it all in, contemplate it, and hope that it changes me, so that I can continue to be change in the world also. So what a joy to get to spend some time with her and It's always fun doing it with you, man. What a blast.
We tell people all the time that this is our favorite job out of all the jobs that we have. Besides, obviously,
it's a joy.
Being husbands and parents and things.
It's a joy and a blessing. And everybody listening right now is taking part in that. And if we have one thing that we just want to do with this, it's if you're listening to this right now, you are a whole person that has a journey that you need to be on and you need to be awake for. And follow your curiosity. Ask questions. You know, like Krista said, if God is God, she said in the interview, I remember it so vividly. It's so good. If God is God, why would we be afraid of anything, any place that our questions could take us?
Right.
Why would we be afraid of that?
Right.
Oh, I love that. I love taking the journey.
Yeah.
And just knowing that it's beautiful even when it's not. And listen to Krista Tippett. Take the journey. And thank you for being here with us. You got anything else?
Yeah, just don't take yourself too seriously, and remember that love is something that you can only get by giving. So let's try to love each other a little bit better out there.
Yeah, let's do that.
And enjoy the song.
Thanks, everybody. We love you. Keep deconstructing.
Into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. I see my brother. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. I see my brother. The garment of our courage, the power to make the peace we long to know. Open up our eyes to see the wounds that bind all of humankind. May our shudder dawn of light with charity and love. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my
Morning people wake up for peace and quiet. McDonald's breakfast people, we wake up for the sweet rush of getting that warm, delicious breakfast right before it ends.
Crush your morning goals with a steak, egg, and cheese bagel or any breakfast sandwich and snag another one for just $1 with the buy one, get one deal. Only in the McDonald's app. Limited time only at participating McDonald's. Valid once per day. Must opt into rewards.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.